Well, hello. Here we are at our seventh lecture. I hope all of you are doing well with your own research and work on the Prajnaparamita, primarily dealing with the 8,000 line version. And I hope that you had a chance to do as much reading of that translation as possible. Even some rereading is not bad. I find it's very helpful. So today I'd like to change pace again. I'd like to deal with some of the issues that we are sometimes push aside and don't pay too much attention to. The main question for today is, how did Prajnaparamita, in one sense, make itself available to ordinary people? Because as you see when you read the sutra itself, it's not that easy. And the thought is very nuanced and it's sophisticated and it's sometimes difficult to follow. So why was it that the Prajnaparamita found such favor with ordinary people and remained a main part of Buddhist textual support for centuries? So one of the reasons, and this is where we are today, we're going to move from in the primary sutra to the chapter where the dialogue between the Buddha and the Arhats is now, for the moment, finished. And instead, we find the audience shifts. It certainly grows in size. The audience for this section is primarily directed toward Shakra. Shakra is king of the heavens, king of the gods, of the devas, very crucial, strong personage. We see in the presence of the four great kings. You'll see in the image, these are the guardian figures. They are the four directions, and they are often depicted as being wrathful, as a good protector probably needs to be. The scarier a protector looks, probably the better they can protect. And then we see 40,000 devas, plus Ananda, who is at this point not yet an Arhat. So to this great audience, you could almost say to this cosmic audience, what does the Buddha have to say in terms of the Prajnaparamita and why it's important? So the text shifts with this change of audience. And now it begins a whole area of speaking about the advantages to be gained if you follow the Prajnaparamita. If you become someone who supports the Prajnaparamita as text, to be copied, to be preserved, to be revered. These advantages are not altogether spiritual, and I believe that this is crucial. And that once you see all the promises that are made, we can begin to understand perhaps why many people use the Prajnaparamita not to find out about emptiness, not to find out about the nature of existence, but something which would help them in our everyday life. Well, first, the Prajnaparamita protects you from Mara. We know the story of the Buddha on his night of enlightenment. Mara doesn't want him to be enlightened, so he brought all his horde of creatures to come and to roar and to try their best to distract and to stop this enlightenment process. The same thing for individuals. Mara represents the world and all its troubles, the world and everything which can come at us. So protection from Mara was considered to be very important. But in addition to Mara, there was protection from, I should have put humans, I think. We are often endangered by other people. And so what about robbers and people who try to harm us or to cheat us or to make our life very difficult? So to have protection from all these people who cause us trouble, that's also good. And some of it is almost amusing. If you have to go see an official, very good to have the Prajnaparamita with you so that they give you a hard time because you don't have the right forms. Prajnaparamita can help you. Then also protection from ghosts. Ghosts, I think, should be seen just as in China. I think in India, it's very similar. The ghosts are the dead. And they are the untransformed dead. That is, the dead who still hang around, can't move on in whatever their rebirth cycle is going to be, cause illness, cause bad feelings, disrupt the aura of the place, disrupt the whole area of life, because they should be going on into their next birth, but they're still with us. So the ghosts, and that has to do, I think, also with our memories. Now, the next is a very down-to-earth thing. It says there's a metaphor. How does Prajnaparamita work with regard to all these damaging, harmful things that can come at us? And the metaphor is quite charming. It says, the Prajnaparamita is like a strong herb, at least a strong herb in terms of odor. And vipers don't like that smell. So people planted in their gardens in India certain kinds of plants that had a smell that the vipers, the cobras, the dangerous snakes didn't like, and they would turn away and not come at you. So what does it mean that the Prajnaparamita has an odor? It means it emanates some powerful rhythms that keep us safe. It's like having one of these really powerful smelling herbs that it will turn away a lot of evil just because it emits some power, and that power is something that helps us. Now, in this passage, Mara thinks. I've been trying to find out if Mara ever says a word which people hear. In the Prajnaparamita, he thinks a lot, but I don't think anybody could hear him. We know because the text itself says that the Buddha had the power to know what Mara was thinking. And since Mara, I think, didn't speak very often, I suspect, knowing what he was thinking, having that supernatural power to know what Mara was thinking was very important. So now we're able to tune in to Mara's thinking. And he thinks, oh my, oh, this is bad. Here, the Tathagata and the gods are face to face. And if we have this face-to-face encounter with the Tathagata, it means trouble for me. So he says, face-to-face with the Tathagata, the gods of the realm of sense desire, that is our world, and the realm of form, which is sure to be predicted as bodhisattvas who will achieve full enlightenment. In other words, this Mara looks down and says, when the Tathagata is face to face with somebody and he's teaching Prajnaparamita, everybody who hears him is bound to go to that special state of being a bodhisattva. And they will go from that state to the ultimate state of Samyak Sambodhi. Not nirvana, you'll notice, but full perfect enlightenment. And so Mara thinks, I have to try to stop this. I can't allow this to take place. So just as he did when he found the Buddha under the Bodhi tree in Gaya, just about to achieve full perfect enlightenment, he brings all his army. And so this great army begins to move toward the place where the Buddha is teaching Prajnaparamita. Mara is the world in one sense. And Mara is the world with all of its army of people who have an agenda, people who can harm, people who can commit acts of greed and hatred and anger, and the list goes on. So Mara gathers all this crowd and says, all right, you, my army of people, go where the Buddha is teaching, and for pity's sakes, stop him. Don't let it happen. And so when it says he conjures up, Mara has the power to just create this huge force that is coming at where the Buddha teaches. Well, Shakra is thinking to himself. He looks out and he sees all these people, this huge array of people coming toward him, and he thinks, this is not like any of the armies of kings that I've ever seen. Oh no, I understand now. This is Mara. And he's pursuing the Buddha. He's going after him. He is intent on making sure that sentient beings are not allowed to achieve full perfect enlightenment. So Shakra, the king of the gods, has a lot of power in terms of his ability, and he looks and sees what's happening. Now, the next text tells us something which is more important than it looks like on first reading. Shakra is king of the gods. He has all this power, as I've just said. So you would think, all right, Shakra, you got all this power, put it to use. But instead, Shakra recalls the perfection of wisdom. He brings this to mind. Even the king of the gods, trying to stop Mara, doesn't do it with thunderbolts or lightning or any force other than to begin to think about the words of the Prajnaparamita, to repeat them and spread them. Well, immediately, Mara, the evil one, when he comes up against this power, gives up. He turns back, goes on his way. Shakra has stopped him from interrupting the teaching and the great power of the perfection of wisdom. So we begin to see that Prajnaparamita, in and of itself, the words, the use of it, holding it, bearing it in mind, repeating it, copying it, spreading it around, has great power. So, next, the Buddha says, by taking up the perfection of wisdom, those who oppose it, those who want to argue about it, those who contradict what it says, all that will disappear if you just take up and read and recite the text itself. You don't have to do anything else. Just like Shakra. Chakra turns away the army of Mara just by thinking of the Prajnaparamita and reciting its words. So it's an interesting idea that instead of battling with someone who's attacking, that they were taught just to recite the words of the Prajnaparamita, and that just in doing that, the opposition would vanish. The Buddha further goes on to say an advantage of Prajnaparamita is those who are devoted to it will not die an untimely death. They're not going to die from poison or the sword or the fire or water. They're not going to drown. They're not going to be burned. They're not going to be stabbed. They're not going to be poisoned. It doesn't say they won't die. It says they will have a natural death, not an untimely death. It won't be too soon. It will be a normal life pattern. So for people who are faced with all of these issues, no wonder they turn to the Prajnaparamita. That I have this great protection from all these things. You can see what my lecture today is trying to say. That the Prajnaparamita made an appeal to ordinary people, not just by its specific teachings, although that's always in the background, but they said to ordinary people, first of all, if you recite it, if you support it, if you copy it, if you disseminate it, if you call it to mind, if you live by it, here are its advantages. And as you can see, there were many. If a follower of the Prajnaparamita were to have to go to war, to go into battle, actually to go into battle and be right in the front line, he could not possibly lose his life. What a promise. So that anybody who is being drafted to have the Prajnaparamita as part of what they're protecting them would have given people a lot of solace. The power of the Prajnaparamita is used in all these metaphoric ways. But the metaphors are ordinary life. So it plays two roles. Number one, it says, here's a way to understand how powerful this thing is. And second, here's the protection that keeps you from physical troubles and problems. Very powerful messages to ordinary people. And so you understand why Prajnaparamita Sutras, perhaps of all other texts, have been copied the most, recited the most. The Diamond Sutra, the Heart Sutra. There's no Buddhist sutras which have been able to achieve quite that state of support from the devotees. And I think you maybe begin to see why. Well, the very spot where this perfection of wisdom is written down and is revered no men, no ghosts of the dead can do harm. So therefore, it was very crucial to find such a place, to feel that this place is protected, because they wrote down right in this room, they copied out the Prajnaparamita. So this room is special. It's already a special place. It even gets more personal. It says, if you really are dealing with the Prajnaparamita, you're not going to become so tired in body or mind. In other words, for people who said, as we all do, and as I was saying today, oh, I feel swamped. Now that I'm speaking of the Prajnaparamita, I feel less fatigued. So we all should do that. To recite or to turn to this text they are saying, then that kind of fatigue, that feeling of being swamped, that feeling of there's just too much to do, doesn't occur. But not only that, if you use this Prajnaparamita, you won't have nightmares. You say, well, were people really so afraid of nightmares? And the answer is, throughout history, yes. Nightmares were often seen as omens, and people interpreted what was happening in their dreams as something which was going to happen to them, or that they had in their dreams already been attacked by forces that were negative and evil. So now the Prajnaparamita gets as personal as saying, if you hold on to this even in your dreams, you'll find ease and bliss. So therefore, as we've mentioned before, the merit which you achieve by making a written copy of the Prajnaparamita, compared to the merit that you achieve by building stupas, is so much more, because of all these things which it does and which it promises to people. It's been a long time ago, but I took students when I was 40 years old to the Himalayas from Berkeley, and we trekked through the mountains for several hundred miles and visited Sherpa Buddhist Tibetan monasteries, trying to find out what kinds of books they had brought with them from Tibet across the Himalayas. It wasn't as exciting in one way as we had expected. In one temple village after another, when we went to the Gompa, to the main Buddhist shrine, and said, what text do you have? They would proudly point to a stack of texts written on palm leaves or written on paper. And they would say, we have the Mother. And they meant the Prajnaparamita. They had a copy of the 100,000 line version of the Prajnaparamita in Tibetan. And when we asked sometime, can we look at what it is? They were at times said, no, you can't. We don't open it. We don't want it to lose its power. It's the Prajnaparamita, and it protects us. It's our mother. And we don't undress her. We don't open it up. It's not used in the way of being a study document. It's used as this power of the teaching. So you can see that when you look and ask throughout history, people who are practicing with the Prajnaparamita, lay people, ordinary people, people can chant at least the Heart Sutra often, very short. They can even chant the Diamond Sutra. And for the Tibetans, to have the mother, Uma, to have this powerful textual collection was enough. It was enough. And these foreign people who came staggering through the snow and the mountainous passes to get to them to say, can we open up and look at your Uma, and can we study and see what it is? They looked at us and in a sense shook their heads and said to themselves, I'm sure, you don't understand. This is just our mother. We just need it to be here. We just need to be able to come into this room and to revere it. We just need to know it's there. We sometimes just need to touch it. So I think that this is why I believe partly the success of the Prajnaparamita, the success that it had with ordinary people, even though the text itself was very difficult to understand. And most people on reading it would probably have been very perplexed. But they weren't perplexed about their fears. They weren't perplexed about what they wanted to happen in life. They were, like all of us at times, like Job in the Hebrew Bible. And Job sometime would say, the very thing I fear the most has come upon me. Death, old age, and disease, the thing I fear the most, here it is. So you can understand why, when people feel that the very thing which I fear the most has come upon me, to be able to have something which just by its very presence can give me assistance, is one of the most powerful teachings that existed within the Buddhist tradition. Thank you very much. I'll see you soon for Lecture 8.